John chapter 3. Let's look at the first few verses there. I'm reading out of this Holman Christian Standard Bible. And it says, there was a man from the Pharisees. I'm in the wrong chapter. Chapter 2 is what I want. I wrote it down on here wrong. On the third day, we'll get to chapter 3 in the next week or so. On the third day, a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee. John chapter 2, verse 1. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. Somebody say invited. Invited, important word there. Invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, they don't have any wine. He said, what's this? What has this concern of yours to do with me, woman? Jesus asked, and then he said, my hour has not yet come. Now that's an interesting conversation. That would make you think there must have been a conversation before this, that this would be, these two people knew what they were talking about, especially Mary would know. And then she says, do whatever he tells you. His mother told the servants. Now 6 stone water jars had been set there for Jewish purification. Each contained 20 or 30 gallons. Filling the jars with water, Jesus told them, so they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the chief servant. Some versions say the chief waiter, the head waiter, and they did. When the chief servant tasted the water, after it had become wine, he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and told him, everybody sets out the fine water first, then after people have drunk freely, the inferior. But you have kept the fine wine until now. Jesus performed this first sign in Cana of Galilee. He displayed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum together with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and stayed there only a few days. Okay, there was a need that came about. They were at this wedding, and then they ran out of, or maybe they didn't have any wine. She said, they don't have any wine. I guess somebody was supposed to go and get some, and they failed to bring it. That's like us showing up back here in the back for a breakfast or a lunch, and the person that forgot to bring the tea, we hadn't got any tea. I'm thinking here, well, just drink water. You know, is wine really that big a need? Now, some people would argue, well, what kind of wine was it? Was it fermented? Was it alcoholic? I don't think it was. There was 2 types of wine in those days, in Old Testament days, and the Old Testament tells us clearly in Proverbs to stay away from that wine that's red, that's fermented, that's alcoholic, that'll make you drunk and make you do things you wouldn't otherwise do. In Proverbs, and I've paraphrased and added a little bit to that, but look not on wine when it's red. In other words, don't even look at wine that's fermented in the Old Testament, said. And there's shaka, and another word that's used for the Old Testament wine, and this is a different word here in the New Testament. But Jesus, part of the Nazarite vow or Nazarites, remember John the Baptist he didn't drink wine nor strong drink, remember? And Jesus, I don't think he would have touched any or created any wine that was fermented, because when it's fermented, it starts rotting. And then the Old Testament customs, Jewish customs, that would make somebody unclean to even touch that kind of stuff. So that's why it was a Nazarite vow, don't touch that kind of stuff, or don't touch dead people. Well, fermented wine was another one they were supposed to touch. So why would Jesus make something that would be a contradiction to the Old Testament? So I think it was grape juice he created here, okay? Now, some people can dig and whine and bellyache and complain, but we're going to move on. But Jesus, the fact is, there was water there, and Jesus turned the water into wine, okay? That's the miracle. And so we see that there was a need. The need was they needed wine. Again, I'm thinking, how important is that? You got a bride and a groom. You got somebody that's, whichever one you are, take whichever one this is. Y'all just going to be whatever you're going to be. Go on about your business. Anyway, they had a ceremony. Why? How important is that? Well, I think that we can grasp from this. Look, any need we've got, is important to God. It's important to Jesus. He helps with the small things, even though it may not be important to somebody else. If it's important to you, it's important to Jesus. Isn't that great? Whatever we think is minute, maybe we can't even find a pair of pliers when we're looking for them, Ask Jesus for help. I do that all the time. I lose stuff from time to time, and I look everywhere I know I'm supposed to look. And finally, I usually pray the same prayer I've got where I pray more frequently. Lord, you knew where I had that at last time. If you showed me where I had it at last time, I sure would appreciate it. A small need. But whatever you need, Jesus can help. Now let's see how to get help with this need. What happened here in this story? First of all, I noticed something. I thought this is important. That's in verse 2. What was that word that I said for you to say with me? Invited, right? It says in verse 2, Jesus and his disciples were invited to this wedding. Okay? They were invited. So it's a good thing that Jesus was already there, see? So the important thing for you and I is, whatever we're doing, invite Jesus. Keep him with you. Whatever you're doing, invite him to go along before the need arises. Now, we have a lot of gun enthusiasts in our area, and some of you have concealed weapons permits. And there's a saying I noticed that kind of goes around in the crowd of those who carry concealed weapons. And anyway, it's like this. I like to carry a weapon with me because I'd rather have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, right? I thought, well, that's the same thing like with a Tylenol or Excedrin migraine. If you've already got it there, that's better than having to, when you get the headache, then go out, and having to find some if it's late at night or whatever. But in the same way with Jesus, it's better to already have him with you in case a need arises. Now, you need him all the time anyway, right? So don't go anywhere that you couldn't invite Jesus to go with you. Don't start getting involved in any kind of activity that you couldn't invite Jesus and him go along with you. That's a good lesson right there. So the first thing, the need for help, already have invited Jesus to be with you. That's very important. And then the second thing, when the need arises, when you discover that you have a need, then pray to Jesus when you have a need. That's exactly what Mary did. Can you think? Can you just think about this? Chapter 2, verses 3 through 4. That's what she did. She said to Jesus, she's talking to him, they don't have any wine. She's beginning to advertise a need. Well, isn't that a prayer? She's just talking to Jesus. So just start talking to Jesus. Sometimes we get hung up on the word prayer when it says pray about this, pray about that. We try to think, okay, how can I get holy and do all that? Just talk to Jesus. Just talk to him. Tell him your need. That's what she's doing. In your own way, just you and Jesus have this conversation. Tell him what you need. All right? Now, third thing is demonstrate faith. Demonstrate faith. With your need, pray to Jesus, and then demonstrate faith. Verse number 5. After he says, my hour is not yet come. What concern of this is, what has this concern of yours to do with me, woman? That's kind of a strange comment. But again, I think that this is based on previous discussion that they've had. And he says, my hour is not yet come. Now, I think she understands what he's talking about. Look, she was born and conceived by the Holy Spirit, see. She knew that Jesus was the Messiah. It was a different raising a child that really is God in the flesh. But, and she probably knew that one day he's going to die on the cross. One day he's going to be glorified. She probably knew all that. And he says, look, it's not my time yet, And then also, it makes me think, why would she even ask him? She knows that he's got the ability to do something that nobody else there must be able to do. Now, how would she know that? I think that she might have seen the miracle that he'd done at home or something. Maybe somebody had a need at home. I got thinking, Jesus, he was already, even as a baby, he was God in the flesh, right? I can just think, okay, suppose he's like 4 or 5 years old, and And, and Joseph is there, and he's trying to measure and say, okay, I've got to cut this piece for this door, and I know it's supposed to be 80.5 inches tall for the rough end, or whatever it was in those days. And I can just see Jesus in my mind thinking, well, Daddy, there's one right there that's 81.5. You just cut off an inch of it, it'll be perfect. Or this one over here is 83 inches. You just cut a little off it. He's not even measured. He just knows, see? He just knows. Now, if you read about him in the Word, you know that he knows things, right? He knew Philip was under the tree, right? He knew all these things. And so I don't know this, but I'm thinking he was different. He was God in the flesh. She had to be able to notice that this baby, this child is different. Boy, he is, it's obviously that he is the Messiah. So she knew he could help. She had faith, right? She believed it, and she demonstrated it, because what did she do next? She told the people with him, look, do what he says. Whatever he tells you to do, just do it. She had faith. Jesus is fixing to meet this need. Don't know how he's going to do it, but he's probably going to involve you. You guys help him with whatever he needs. And so Jesus tells him, take those jars over there and fill them with water. Now, demonstrate faith. She demonstrated it by what she said. She started responding with anticipation. So when you and I are praying, when we are asking Jesus to help us with a need, I think we too would be wise, and then the Bible teaches this also, demonstrate faith. Start responding with anticipation. If I'm praying for a set of keys that I've lost, or a $100 bill that I don't know what in the world I did with it, did I put it in this pocket or that pocket? I'm going to pray and ask for help, but I'm going to keep looking, because I feel like eventually God's going to show me where it's at. I'm going to keep trying to think, and finally he'll put something in your mind, or he'll put somebody else and say, here it is over here, I found it, like my wife finds stuff for me all the time that I can't find. But anyway, demonstrate faith. Start responding with anticipation. And then here's another thing, fourth thing on my list. Remember, obedience to Jesus normally precedes miracles from Jesus. Obedience to Jesus normally precedes miracles from Jesus. Look at 6-8. Jesus, after this request and after this demonstration of faith, verse 7, right then, he kicks in and starts to prepare and meet that need. He tells these guys that's with him, fill the jars with water. He told them. So they filled them to the brim. See? He told them what to do, and they started obeying. Then he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the chief servant. Now there's another command. And they did it. See? And then that's when it's discovered that this water has been turned to wine. So, demonstrate faith. And then remember, obedience to Jesus normally precedes miracles from Jesus. You're praying, you're asking God to fill a need, you got to do like these people right here. You got to keep obeying Jesus in the process. Now, I thought this is a little interesting here. He gives them instructions. They're taking these water pots. It tells us that these water pots had been set there for Jewish purification. That tells me, oh man, they fixing to mess with some church furniture, some church stuff here. You better be careful. I've been to churches where if you were, to use the offering plate and take it and put some fruit in it and just start passing out fruit to the guy. Well, some of these old heads that's in there, they just have a fit. They just about to have a stroke. He's taking that belongs on the Lord's Supper table. It's supposed to stay right there. What's he doing touching that, And these Jews back in those days, they were picky about rituals and stuff. So it's interesting that Jesus gives them instructions to do something against normal religious procedures. See? So Jesus may require you to do something against normal religious procedures before he actually feels that need. Well, who did this really belong to? Those water pots were really his, right? He said, this is my Father's house in another part, right? So all that stuff really was his anyway. So he could do whatever he wanted to with it. So a church organization better be careful when it has stuff that, that's not usable for ministry. It's, people, I remember I was in a church one time, as John Hallwood used to say, less than 100 miles from here. And I was doing music, and I wanted to be able to move. We were trying to do a big Christmas musical thing, and instruments and drama along with it. And I wanted to remove a pew over here on this side and a pew on the no, you can't do that. No, sir, you can't do that. And then I've been in other situations where to do real ministry and have an impact for Jesus, I'd want to move this piece of furniture from here to over there. No. So-and-so donated that church, or so-and-so bought that 20 years ago. So-and-so bought that and give it to the church. And I'm thinking, they still got hooks in it. Charles Stanley said, if you've given something to the Lord and you still got a hook in it, it doesn't belong to the Lord. It's still yours. And that's about the way it is, right? And I thought one time, I think I'm going to stand up one time and then one of these days in a business meeting and make a motion that we buy all this stuff that's been donated. Let's buy it, and so we can give it to the Lord so he can do with it what he wants to, right? But anyway, people get hung up. I'm glad we don't have that problem right here. You don't know how glad. Listen, you are such a great bunch right here. I am so thankful God's placed me here. We don't have problems like that. But don't be surprised, though, if we got something that one day becomes just a habit, becomes a ritual. We got to be on guard because, if we can't obey Jesus with something that's here, we need to get rid of it, right? We need to get rid of it. Let's move on. Obedience also continued after the miracle in verse 8. After the miracle, after it occurred, then he said, now draw some out and take it to the chief servant. I think it was already wine at that point. It might have turned into wine on the way. But obedience continues with the miracle. Now, here's the last thing. Two more things. The next one is, use your miracle as a testimony. Verse 11, it says, Jesus performed this first sign. Some Bibles say miracle, but remember the Greek word that it's translated from is semeion, which literally is sign miracle. Jesus performed this first sign miracle. And I've talked about this several times, even last week, that this was to validate that he truly was the Son of God. Like in the Old Testament, when a person was a prophet of God, there was validation by miracles, right? So the same thing, all the miracles you see recorded in the New Testament, Jesus was validating who he was, that he really was the Messiah. He was God in the flesh, able to do just whatever. Of course, Jesus always lined up with what the Father wanted. He displayed his glory, and his disciples believed. So, I think that if we have a miracle in our lives, God has provided a need, he's helped you in some way. I think that, we're wise in sharing with others about those miracles. I love to hear stories of how God's working in people's life. I like to hear about miracles. It strengthens my faith. And if a lost person hears it, guess what? It can give them hope. Maybe I ought to give my life to Jesus. Maybe I ought to, trust him and start serving him. And that's what signs are all about. Signs are to produce belief. These were sign miracles, and the reason for them was to produce belief in other people. So, as you experience miracles, share them with people, lost people, saved people, unless, of course, the Lord tells you otherwise. Now, interesting in verse 11, that it says, he displays his glory, and his disciples believed in him. It didn't say the other people. I thought that's interesting. His disciples believe in him. Okay, now I guess if somebody was lost and they started following, that means they're a disciple, right? They're followers, they're learners. Let's move on. The last thing. Miracle recipients continue to journey and dwell with Jesus. Miracle recipients continue to journey and dwell with Jesus. Look at verse 12. The Jewish, after this, he went down to Capernaum together with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they stayed there. Okay? It says only a few days, but the point is, after the miracle, they still carrying Jesus with them. Mary's still there. Jesus is still there. He's still there. With his mother, the one that had the need, the one that had requested help, the one that demonstrated faith, the one that now, she still got him present. She still has Jesus with her. So, I wondered, okay, God knows our heart. He knows who's going to really follow him. And does he do more miracles for us when he knows that the heart's going to be obedient and demonstrate faith? I think he does. Some of you may think differently. And I know that lost people can receive miracles and still be lost. But if Jesus is truly helping us, if he's helped us, continue to keep him with you. Invite him before the need, and after he fills the need, keep him with you. Obey him. Keep following Jesus. Let's stand together in prayer.